show must go on, and indeed it does, because a US conservative legal group, you might want to just sit down for this, has urged an anti-discriminatory agency to investigate cereal company Kellogg's. America First Legal has accused Kellogg's of having an unlawful workplace and of sexualising its products. Our cereal's gone sexy. For Pride Month, a box of Cheez-It crackers was released, featuring drag queen RuPaul on the cover, as well as cereal boxes visibly celebrating LGBTQ plus Pride Month on the packaging. Iconic character Tony the Tiger also recently posed for a photo with transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney. You could argue, of course, that's two men in costume, at the Tony Awards in June. In the UK, it has been announced that footballers will continue to take the knee as well before some football matches this season. Football captains have said that they are unified in the belief that discrimination has no place in football or wider society. So, a couple of wokey stories for you there. Has the woke agenda finally gone completely barking mad? Joining me this evening from across the pond is the former politician, full-time legend, Douglas Carswell. Douglas, great stuff. Thank you very much. As I can see, you've got Mississippi in the background. Fantastic.
Thanks for having me.
Right, let's start with Kellogg's, which is a phrase I never thought I would say to you. What do you make of this? Are they really aggressively sexualising products aimed at children with LGBTQ stuff?
Well, I'm not sure that America First Legal has got quite the right strategy here. I'm not sure getting a government federal agency to fight this for them is really the way forward. But I think what this does tell us is that in America now there's enormous sensitivity to the woke corporate agenda that there's been. We saw it with Disney, we saw it with Bud Light. There's a real resentment on the part of tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of Americans who really don't like seeing woke ideology put on their cereal packets.
OK, why does it matter, though? You know, why does it matter? When I walk around a shop and I'm looking at cereal, which I don't make a habit of doing, the thing that I'm really looking at is the price. I don't really necessarily care whether or not it's got a trans person on it. Or do you just think that it's needless virtue signalling? Is that your main concern?
Well, I think it should be up to the people who own the brand to decide how to market it. I mean, fundamentally, in a free country, if they want to try to sell beer by associating their product with transgenderism or breakfast cereal by embracing woke ideology, great, good on them. But what we're seeing is that the American consumer, in really very large numbers, is turning against this. Look at what happened to Bud Light. They lost hundreds of millions, tens of millions of dollars worth of revenue. I suspect that they won't be the last to fall foul of this.
No.
It's not really a case of trying to prevent companies from marketing things the way they want. What I do think is that companies are becoming very sensitive to the fact that middle America has just had enough of this.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point I was hoping to get out of you there, because clearly, initially, they must have thought that it made good business sense to do woke stuff. And then increasingly, I think people are pushing back on that. We've had Gillette, we've had Bud Light, we've had all sorts, OK? And I think there's a sense of unfairness, especially maybe for a lot of natural-born women who then see men dressed as women getting a variety of different jobs or indeed beating them in some sporting events, which is not particularly nice. I think people also see through the absolute fakery of it, Douglas, and it's on that I want to get you now, which is about Premier League footballers saying they're going to take the knee next season. It's something that started in your neck of the woods now in America, and it's going to continue to happen here 4 years on from George Floyd dying, OK? They don't mean it, do they?
It's ridiculous. The average Premier League footballer, I think, earns £3.6 million a year. The idea that we should take these people seriously as symbols of victimhood and discrimination, people who've been treated unjustly, it's absurd. It's ridiculous. If you're earning over $100,000, £100,000 a year, the idea that you're somehow a victim is nonsense. Look at who our footballers are. Surely, actually, the story of Premier League footballers in this country tells you that we are a meritocracy, that in this country, in Britain, you can get ahead by being talented and hardworking. The idea that you should wrap yourselves up in victimhood is absurd and ridiculous. And I think most people now see it as that.
You know what makes me laugh is that when you go and watch football in the pub and people take the knee, there is usually actually a bit of a ripple of boos. And I don't think that's because people in the pub are racist. It's because they see straight through it. They think this is a pointless virtue signalling gesture that footballers don't mean. And we know they don't mean it because I am convinced, Douglas, that if you gave footballers enough money, they would all go and play in North Korea. They don't really care.
I think there's a lot in what you say. We see footballers quite willing to accept contracts to go and play in countries with very dodgy human rights records like Saudi Arabia. If they were really moral, they would be much more discerning about that. What this is about is embracing a set of virtue signaling propositions that allow them to try to position themselves as elite icons in an age where there's they think there's advantage in doing so. It's not really about helping disadvantaged minority people in inner city Britain.
One quick one, finally, with you, Douglas, is that you, of course, were a Tory, then you were UKIP, and then you decided to move continent. And I'm just wondering, when you look at what's happening with the Channel migrant crisis at the moment, do you think you got out at the right time?
It's insane, isn't it? 100,000 people have crossed the Channel. And who's been in charge for 13 years? They talk now as though they're going to act. They're incapable of governing. They're in office but not in power. They're in government but they don't know what to do with it. It's extraordinary. It also, I think, shows a moral collapse. What kind of country are you when you can't kick out people who come in illegally? Do you think people going to China illegally or Nigeria illegally would be allowed to stay in those countries? It shows that the United Kingdom is governed by clowns and has had a moral collapse. I think it's profoundly disturbing.
Well, strong stuff. Douglas, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Look after yourself. Douglas Carswell there, former politician, now all the way in Mississippi.